Welcome to James Cannings today, who's the co-founder of MMT Digital and now these days the Chief Sustainability Officer. And we know each other a little bit from before, James. So we chatted here a little bit before we started this podcast about the outer environment, making it sustainable, but also your inner environment. So we're going to jump into this, how you kind of make that coherent and link the two. But could you tell us about your entrepreneur journey and how you grew this company from like a few people to over 200 people today?
And just maybe, can I just step in for a moment? Because myself and Daniel were having a chat. I never heard of the titles Sustainability Officer. I had to ask him, what does it actually do? So before we go on to that, maybe just to explain, what does it mean? Like, this is just something that seems to be new.
Yeah, it is. So yeah, we'll come back to the story, but I think that's a really important definition as well, because definitely the term sustainability gets banded around and means different things. And so I think what we're going to talk about a bit more today is kind of, sustainability in the much broader sense. A sustainable business has to be one where people aren't burning out. A sustainable entrepreneur, can't have commercial success, but drive himself to an early grave. And there's diversity and equality and inclusion in that kind of broader sustainability piece. In terms of my current role, it's a little kind of less, perhaps we can get into it, and I do think there's some parallels. You'd probably describe me as the Chief Environmental Sustainability Officer, right? So although I dovetail a lot into the teams at the company that are focused on diversity, equality, inclusion, actually my current role is a little bit less on kind of like sustainable business and more on, I'd say, the net zero strategy, the environmental piece. How do we produce sustainable products to our clients? So in our cases, it's technology services. So how do we produce low carbon websites, low carbon film shoots, environmentally sustainable digital marketing and technology services? So yeah, it's a role that didn't exist a while back, and I think we can get into, I think, sort of longer term, that there is the view that it will broaden and that we have to look at sustainability. There's more to the sustainability aspect than just the environmental piece. Because if you look at the big picture of that, it's very easy to be sustainable. If you can produce a very, very sustainable jumper by bulldozing a local village in South America and getting it done in a sweatshop, right? It's going to be very low carbon and very low cost, right? Tick in the box. But that's where you step out of the Western bubble and actually you've got to talk about sustainability in a much kind of broader sense, and as part of that, leveling up the world. So it has a bit more of an environmental slant, but actually, I have a deep fascination with the broader sort of sustainability piece that we want to bring in. So no, it's a great question, Patrick.
I wonder what's driving it, though. There seems to be very much a change in the psyche between the generations now and my generation. So across many frontiers, and I just heard a quote. Apparently Stephen Hawking said that there's about 100 years left for human civilization. So it's almost that it's the stick approach, that we have no choice but to get involved with this. And
I think so. Like, I love, I don't want to sort of get too much into the environmental piece because it's such a sort of thing I'm passionate about. But, I think what's happened is that, look, I mean, humans, if you are looking at what we're trying to do of individuals, we're trying to say to people, look, you need to eat less red meat, and you need to buy an electric vehicle, and you need to fly less and drive less and go on fewer holidays, right? And these are all the things that you need to do, and they have a cost in terms of time or behavior. And the benefit to you is that your kids might not die in 80 years or 100 years. And whilst that sounds like quite a compelling argument, a behavioral scientist will tell you that it's not. It won't really work. Public messaging like hands, face, space, that we might be familiar with, certainly those in the UK, that was the sort of campaign to get us to wash our hands and keep our distance during the pandemic. That works because our brains are quite basic things, and we're used to dealing with threats like lions, and a pandemic is much more like a lion. And maybe dying in 100 years, our brains just don't wire into that at all. I think we could all probably agree that if it was a meteorite crashing to Earth in the next couple of years, we'd probably be running around doing different things. So public messaging and trying to get mass, people to change en masse is unlikely to be that effective. Businesses are very selfish too, but where I'm optimistic and why I think it's a change from 10 years ago, where it was just a little bit of corporate social responsibility, is that there's a kind of critical mass of young people, the Greta Thunberg kids or growing up and are now coming into the workforce, and in another 10 years they're going to make up a big part of that workforce, and they're angry. And it's not just about a business not being able to sell its products or services to that generation, it's also not being able to employ those people. That generation, it's not cool to come out of university and go and work for BP at the moment. They have a big problem recruiting young talent. So it's double. It's we can't sell our goods and services, and we can't attract young good talent. Businesses are selfish too, and there's a whole other debate around whether capitalism can solve the problem that it's essentially driven and created. But from an optimistic point of view, there's this huge win-win for businesses that are kind of selfish entities as well, that they have to drive forwards with this, and that's why I think it but that does spread out into the stuff hopefully we'll get into about the broader sustainability piece, and genuinely caring about your workforce. Yes, you can argue that businesses are doing it for kind of selfish reasons, and you can argue about whether that's okay or not, but I think they kind of have to behave in this way now, if they're going to survive. Like future businesses, the clock's running down on them if they're not being sustainable from an environmental point of view, diversity, inclusion, mental health, all of this stuff. It can't just be a tick in the box and a web page that says how brilliant we are, because you get called out on it. And I don't know, we touched on this earlier before the call, Patrick. What's changed is maybe social media. I'm not too sure, but companies just kind of can't get away with it now. You just get called out, and you get called out very, very publicly, and it's quite damaging. Platforms like Glassdoor and stuff. But
how do you, James, if you take us through your journey, it'd be interesting to see, because I'm sure when you started out, two things. First, you were just a few people, and you're focused on getting the business going, and that was some 20 years ago or something. So the environment, both in many aspects, was different. So taking it from that point in time, what you were focused on, how that has evolved, and when did the sustainability come into the picture? And also, it's interesting to hear that sustainability officer. I think that's I've seen it many places, but everybody's focusing on the outer environment. They're not focusing on the inner environment of yourself or your staff. So it's just assumed that it's the outer environment. So I'll be interesting to hear about your personal journey, your staff, and now where you are right now, and how that has changed. So if you take a step back from where it all started.
Yeah, look, so I'm super proud of the journey that I've been on, and I'll cut a very long story short, but I've only had one job and never written a CV and never had a job interview and never had a proper job really. When I graduated from, I'm a techie. I did computer science and cybernetics, and when I graduated in 1999, I started a business in my bedroom with my buddy Ben, who I've known since I was 6 weeks old. We grew up together. And we were kind of doing all sorts of things. We were doing CD-ROMs back then. We started doing basic little websites for local little companies and things like that, and all sorts of things. But, at that stage in life, you've got like this infinite pool of energy, right? We were burning it at both ends. I remember taking a CD-ROM and dropping it off at Ben's mum's house, because back then, if we were doing something for a client, you'd have to like post it to them so they could look at the thing you were building. And it was like 7:30 in the morning, and she went, "Oh wow, James, you're up early." I looked at her and went, "No, I'm just up really late," and I'd been up all night getting this thing done. And but you're young and you're in your 20s, and so from a company point of view, look, first 10 years somehow we stayed in business. We were just kids growing up. We got to about 10 or 15 people, turning over £1 million. That seemed amazing at the time, and then just moved into being a kind of more technical business. building quite complicated websites and web platforms. So today we build, a lot of the websites for Vodafone in the UK. So it's big sort of front end, but also back end integrations. And obviously that just happened to be, the internet took off as luck would happen, right? It just happened to be a good area to be in. And we became kind of a pretty large, what you would call design and build agency in the UK, got up to about 60 or 70 people back in 2016. Sold the business then to a small group called Be Heard that was subsequently acquired at the start of lockdown by MSQ. So today, MMT still exists. I'm still the co-founder. I wear that hat and hang out with the exec team and have some respect. And Ben is still very much there and is still the CEO. But they really are driving the next phase of the growth of the business and have been for the last few years. And then MSQ is 1,000 people across 10 agencies. So MMT very much the kind of largest part of that. I think, in terms of when did sort of personal sort of well-being, sustainability, if you like, become important on that journey, for me, it was probably in my mid 30s. And one thing I do have to call out is my wife, Emma, who I know you guys know, but I don't think I'd be anywhere near as into this as if it wasn't for Emma. She sort of initially dragged me into it, and then eventually become a kind of a bit of evangelist for it all. She's incredible. She's a PT, a nutritionist, has done the Oxygen Advantage course with you guys, and as have I, and is out for a health summit at the moment. So if I don't give her enough credit, I just make sure I do that bit now, because she'll kill me if I do a podcast with you guys and pretending to be some sort of great evangelist for this. It's really all she's been incredible. But I would say probably mid 30s, and it started, and at that point then I was kind of getting pretty much like not in great physical shape, which meant that I actually wasn't in very good, there's a lot of stress scaling a business and taking it through an exit, even post exit, like after you've sold a business, this even more stress. Actually, one of the sort of darkest mental places I went was a few months after we'd sold the business, this sort of life-changing exit, because there was this sort of realization that life hadn't changed, right? And now I had this like earnout where they want you to grow the business, and there are all these targets, and you go from elation to being back down in meetings in London, flogging websites and trying to grow the business, and your life kind of changed, but it hasn't changed, if that makes sense. I'm sure it's a kind of so it's that old adage of like, money doesn't make you happy, right? I mean, it gives you choice and it can do, but that was quite.
But lack of money makes you sad.
There's a happy medium there
somewhere.
Yeah, and I don't. Yeah, I would choose my words carefully there, because it was an amazing point in my life, but mentally it was really tough. Mid 30s, out of shape physically. I've been quite lucky and always been quite lean, but I think started to chip away thanks to Em at my nutrition. So that was a big one. You're just eating crap, especially when you're running down to London and you're on the road and you're going to Pret and you're grabbing sandwiches and drinking coffee, and so Em really helped me with the nutrition aspect. I'm tall, and so inevitably I started getting back problems because I spend a lot of time like hunched over a computer. And so a lot of guys, I got into yoga because I was dragged there kicking and screaming by my wife, right? Oh, yoga, right? You have this sort of, has a stigma around it for guys. I think within the first week, I'd done a sort of power yoga session, which is a sort of modern form of Ashtanga, and realized it was the hardest workout I'd ever done in my life. I don't know, just sweat was dripping off me.
James, can I jump in?
Patrick.
Sorry.
Of course, yeah, just interrupt.
I think this is a key message, and I can imagine so many individuals, especially men in occupations, and there's so many demands on their time that their work is absolutely consuming them. So obviously, okay, you had your wife, and she was part of the driving force, but there's that dilemma. You know that you need to be in shape and doing all of these things, but at the same time, there's a workload here. And it's very easy for the person, because you're so conscientious about the workloads, that you put this secondary. That's a major mental shift. So for you, did you just decide, was it gradual over a period of time? When you first decided Did you spend a little bit of time doing it, making the shift? Did you go all in? When did you do it? So for example, did you get up an hour earlier in the morning? Did you do it in the morning? What were the practical things that if, say, somebody our age, well, I know you're younger than I am, we'll say somebody heading towards 50, they don't have the time, their workload is consuming them, but now they're feeling guilty about not giving themselves attention because everything else is consuming them. How do you make that change, and how did you make it, and
Yeah, that's such a
what's the
great
practical
question,
stuff?
and I think it's it's incremental. I mean, anyone who is into PT will tell you like the worst thing to do is just go all in January and dry January. It's like those are just all terrible ideas, right? Don't stop drinking in January, just drink less generally, and we'll make these increments. So everything's been incremental. I'm still on like a journey from like I'm 40. What am I, 44 45 this year, and I probably really started on this over 10 years, and I'm still tweaking little things like changing my breakfast, tweaking that, and it's a really long, like that's the message, right? It's just like, just don't go all in. Like I think the worst thing an exec can do is like, right, I'm out of shape, I need to train for 2 hours in the morning, I need to change my nutrition, I got to do yoga in the evening, because that is not sustainable, right? We've all seen that. Just do one little thing, change your breakfast or change your lunch. And so I mean, it was a combination of things like yoga. Yeah, it was just a few times a week. We were lucky there was an evening class at sort of a 6:30. It wasn't too disruptive. One of the things that we did is put a gym in our garage like that. We've got a really nice gym in the garage now, but that wasn't fancy initially. We had a double garage that was just full of crap, and we stripped it out and we put a partition wall. I mean, we spent £300 and put some carpet down. I got Sky in to put a TV at the end, and we bought some cheap kit, and so we had that. And but it was just these incremental things, and yoga, again, lucky with them. We probably do yoga together 2 or 3 times a week. That's our morning routine. That's easier in the post-COVID world because I'm not getting up and flying down to London a lot. But it's so like incremental, like whatever you do, just go, right, what is the one little thing I could do this month, right? Whether it's changing my breakfast, nutrition thing, I'm going to do yoga once a week, or I'm going to do it in the morning with my wife, and then maybe next month that might be two days a week, or another change in nutrition. But that's the only advice I can really give is kind of make that incredibly incremental. But just to finish on the yoga point, I think I went into that because of back issues. I was then surprised by how good it was for me physically, and then I was doing some gym work as well, but I don't think I've ever been as kind of ripped as I was. I don't do as much now actually, but when I did yoga, you look at these guys who just do yoga, they're like gymnasts, like I got in really great definition. But the bit that surprised me was the mental bit, and I still evangelize about that, and that connection into the world of breathing, which I'd love to talk to you about, really, because that's been a journey. Like clearly people have been doing yoga for years and hundreds of years, figure out for non-scientific reasons that nasal breathing and just certain breathing patterns would just kind of calm the mind. And just the lovely thing with yoga is just spending 5 minutes at the start of the practice and maybe 10 minutes at the end thinking about nothing. And that's a really hard thing to do. Like to stop and think about nothing is really hard, or to let your mind wander and bring it back. And you don't do that when you go in the gym, right? You just jump in the gym and you do a workout and you come out, or you go for a run, or you go for a swim, or you go for a ride. You can, you absolutely can.
Do you know what? And I would love to see, you know what? There has been such a letdown, I have to say. I came across the focus on breathing and awareness back 25 years ago. I was lucky. I came into it by accident. It has been taught so incorrectly for so many years, for decades. It's been seen so left of field. And this literally, if you go for a walk, because I can understand that people don't have the time to be doing X, Y, Z. They don't have the time to do yoga, don't have the time to do breathing, don't have the time to do exercise, whatever. But you can do a couple of things together. And you can go for a walk and you can focus on your breathing during the walk. You can go for the walk and you can bring your full attention out into the present moment. And we have to get away from all of this left of field connotations. You know, it has really put people off. And ultimately, if we talk about the benefits of it, you mentioned in terms of bringing in that mental awareness. Now, if we want to access flow states, and if we want to get into that state of mind whereby we're in relaxation and alertness at the same time, where creativity comes in, intuition comes in, bliss comes in, that you're totally absorbed with 100% of your attention on doing what you're doing. And also it's saving energy, and it gives you the resilience that you deal better with difficult situations. That's not being taught in the business world. And partly because the tools that you access to get there is changing sleep, not just sleep hygiene, but improving functional breathing. And that's been overlooked. And the yoga community, they need to wake up a little bit, I have to say.
It was amazing to me. What I loved, as you say, like it's the problem with it is that it puts it in the kind of woo-woo camp, right?
Yes,
and,
yes.
And what was amazing I kind of felt the benefits, and you know, talk about sleep. I got my Aura ring on. I can tell you my sleep score last night and my HRV, and you know, become very obsessed with it. I love it. But you know, I've felt the benefits. I don't think I necessarily connected it with the breathing at that point. I think I just connected it with the taking time out to try and focus, to stop my mind being busy.
Bring your attention into your body. You're doing
exactly.
poses that you have to bring your attention to doing what you're doing. So you are taking your attention out of your mind.
Well,
even though you mightn't know
it. And when you're holding a really hard pose, you can't sort of think about, oh, that bloody email that I got last night, that was annoying, because you're right on the edge of what you can do. But actually it's when you stop and then at the end. But you know what was kind of cool, and you know, doing the Oxygen Advantage course with Daniel and chatting to you was kind of connecting these two worlds of like, okay, like the science has kind of caught up with something that they figured out in some weird way, and could see and feel the benefits, but couldn't explain it. And you're right. I suspect the kind of part of the challenge you've got with trying to engage with the C-suite at the moment is that it's considered all a bit hippy dippy, woo, whatever it is, but it's not when you read your book and learn the science. And you know,
well, Jay, if I can step in and just it's interesting because what we're trying to do, Pat and myself now with Oxygen Advantage, is to kind of bring it in real time. What separates breathing from yoga and many other activities, that you can change your state in real time, before an important meeting, during an important meeting, and you got the Oura ring, for example, to measure it. Like, it's almost like with the outer environment, you measure the carbon footprint. This is the same, but it measures your footprint inside. So I think when you can measure this stuff, it becomes more of a mirror towards yourself. So I think this is the first, with all these biometric devices, that you can use it in real time. And that's something you have to go away for, because you always think, oh, yoga is great, training is great, changing your diet. But in real time, before an important meeting, after an unexpected stress event, you can use breathing. You always have it with you. That's why I think the real power is. And you can also measure it. If you don't kind of believe it, you can see the stress levels go up and down. So you can calibrate stress with breathing methods. So I think that's why we're trying to approach it in a different way. That's, I think, I haven't seen anywhere else, because it's very powerful.
Daniel, I wonder if somebody is living with racing thoughts and in constant fear and constant greed, is it going to be a recipe for sustainability, both in the workforce, but also in the broader environment? And I'm going to draw the attention to, I would love to know inside the mind of Putin at this moment. Can we really say that that individual is connected? Or there's something going on with the human psyche, and that, you know, personality traits, it would be very interesting. What sort of psyche do you need for sustainability of this planet? What sort of psyche do you need to make sure that the workforce and the people that you're connecting with, because it's like this, we all have a bad day. Yeah. You'll have a bad day every now and again. You feel like shit. Yeah. You're going to treat everything else like shit. Some guy cuts you off, you're going to blow the horn at him. It's a totally different when you're in a different frame of mind. And that's what I would say with people who have, you know, a tendency towards anxiety, a tendency towards racing mind, a tendency to be lost in thought, to be self-absorbed. Because if you're self-absorbed with your own mind, how can you consider anything else outside of you? And that's the message. So really the question here is, can sustainability be a factor if the human psyche that's still pervasive out there, if that's going to persist?
I mean, it's a incredibly deep, I mean, there's not a simple answer to that one, obviously, Patrick. I mean, I think that, what I would say is, I think there's, there's the parallel we talked about with environmental sustainability, but I think there's a friction there in terms of like trying to solve that, and GDP and economic growth are like that. And you can make an argument that businesses driving to net zero can grow and be more sustainable, but there are definitely question marks over that. There's also, I think, a friction right down at the kind of if that's the macro stuff like that, there's a friction between the modern world and trying to be wealthier, and that being a marker of success, that you're achieving more in business, that you're climbing the ranks, that you're getting that promotion, that you're getting the bigger house. And that, I think there's just this friction there. Now, one of the things that I've done, and that's easy for me to do in my position, is, and I had this conversation with them the last couple of years, I've actually worked on trying to be more crap in what I do, right, in my workplace, right? That's the best way I can do it. Be less good.
Now,
right?
I'm interested.
At work. Okay. So because of starting a business in my bedroom, and that's all I've ever known, right? I'm pretty obsessive. Like, that's my mindset. If someone emails me, I email them back, right? If you email me, you'll get a response within the next few hours, and like, and I think I'm pretty good at what I do, right? And I'm very responsive, and I'm very driven. And one of the things I need to do is kind of be less good at the work, just be a bit more relaxed about that, be a bit more crap. Like, just, I don't need to worry about, maybe I could just email you back tomorrow instead of this afternoon.
And not to feel guilty about it.
Not exactly, not to feel guilty about it. Now, I say that I started that with the premise of like, that's easier sort of said than done, because I'm in a sort of privileged position, and I can be more crap because I've sort of achieved all I need or want to achieve from a kind of, commercial point of view in my career. I'm kind of in this lovely space. I've got a lovely family. I can be a bit more crap, but I think there's something in that not to tell individuals to be more crap, but there's this friction there, and that's the elephant in the room, and we've got to have that grown-up conversation at an environmental point of view. MSQ is a digital marketing company, right? Our sole purpose is to help our clients sell more stuff. Right? We're driving consumerism. We're a big part of the problem, right? So that's the elephant in the room there. I think some of the elephant in the room is sustainability. I'm not sure whether I'm directly answering your question or not, but I think there's just this friction between the modern workplace and sustainability, and it's not, the answer isn't to tell people, oh, it's okay to be more crap. That isn't a solution. It's got to come from the top down. It's got to be that the organization not helps them be worse at their job, but helps them, give them that space and tells them that that's okay, and that it's not acceptable to work those extra 2 hours. That's not good, because you're going to get burnt out and you're going to get mental stress, and that's not good for the business long term, and it's not good for you. And I think some of those conversations are happening. But
what would you
James, interesting you say that, with kind of like the tug between, on a macro level, if you take the environment, but on a micro level at a company, if you be more sustainable with the environment versus profits, when it really comes down to all the companies, same with stress in a company. Everybody's have seen numbers with billions of dollars in every country that, for stress related diseases. But when it comes down to the specific company, what can you do? You don't see a whole lot. So you got the fluffy stuff. You see the report statistics of global impact on environment and stress. But when you come down to boss versus the employer, what do they actually do when you have, spending money doing breeding, for example, or whatever it is, spending money on like reducing the carbon footprint versus profit? That's I see a mismatch.
And I think it depends on the business. Actually, I think we're pretty lucky in what we do as a business, because I mean, all businesses are people businesses, right? I mean, that's a bit of a cliche, but of course they've all got people and they're all people businesses. But I think some businesses are more people businesses than others. So we're a professional services company. You can think of us like a consultancy, right? We're just a bunch of brilliant people delivering services to our clients, right? Whether you can, you know, we're the same as Accenture, same as any kind of professional services consultancy type business. We just happen to be building websites or delivering technology services. Now that's much easier to have a conversation, even if the C-suite is kind of quite selfish and profit driven, because clearly you want to have people that are there for a long time, that they want to be at the top of their game. We should definitely, you know, there's really clear and obvious benefits to giving them mental space. Yeah, because that's we're going to grow, we're going to get better people, we will be better. I think that's very different if you're Amazon, right? And your staff are the people, you know, picking stuff and putting them in trays, right? Because how much do you care about that? Because they're, you know, perhaps a bit more, you know, expendable, and there's a high level of churn. So I think that depends on the type of company, so I think we're in a space where that conversation is easier to have. I think if you take you know, the big corporates, they can perhaps see the benefit of that from the exec leadership team point of view, but I wonder as things go down whether businesses actually see the benefit of investing in their staff in those types of businesses.
When did you make that personal / transition for your company to become more sustainable? After 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, and also what do you do personally for yourself and also the staff, like that 3-step process that I would like to call yourself, your staff, and the outer environment?
I think just from, if we're talking about that broader sustainability piece, the environmental stuff came later. That came, you know, only 4 or 5 kind of years ago, actually. The net zero side of it. I couldn't sort of pick a point. Like I think that the type of business that we are, and I would like to think the type of people that myself and Ben are, like if anything, I always like to feel, you know, there's this sort of thing that people often say, oh, I've got to be a real asshole to succeed in business, right? And sadly that there probably is a graph you can draw of being a bastard and being successful. I think that I've always, you know, I'm just a techie, I'm just a computer geek, and you guys know me a little bit. You know, I hope if nothing else that, you know, Ben and I are just kind of nice people, right? Every single week I do I have a meet the founder session. I used to do it 1-to-1 with everybody, but now I probably have 2 or 3 people on the call. But every single person who starts within the business today and forevermore, as long as I'm there, within their first week, I spend an hour and I take them through the journey and I show them pictures of me and Ben, like when we were kids growing up, and we sort of tell them the story. So I feel like we didn't define it as that. We've always just tried to be nice people, and, you know, I know it's a naff word, I'm using that on purpose, but to treat our people with respect and treat them nicely. You know, when we brought in an exec team, and I tell this story on the Meet the Founder session, there isn't a trick to scaling the business. Employ people that are better than you, smarter than you, pay them well, look after them properly, treat them with respect, and like good things will happen. And you see a lot of founder-led, founder-owned businesses cap out at 50, 60 people, right? They struggle to get up into that next phase because you have to let go of your baby, literally, right? Almost literally. And put in an exec team and let them scale the business. So I don't think I could answer your question properly, Daniel, and say where did it come. I feel like when I look back at it, we've always tried to grow a sustainable business in terms of just really looking after people, because whether it was, I don't think it was entirely driven by, I think because we are nice people, but also we could see that was the best way to sort of scale a successful professional services business. I think as you scale, you have to wrap proper processes in it. You know, Ben and James being nice and chatting to everyone in the kitchen, that's not scalable when you've got offices all over the world. You've got to have an HR team, and you've got to invest in, you know, DEI and put structures and sort of process around that and give people space. But I think that the culture of the business has always been, you know, when we had our London office and we worked with London clients, there was always this clash of culture because we were based up in the Midlands, and we'd always, like, it was 9 to 5:30. And the problem with London, the London culture becomes 8 till 7, right? That's just like a normal working day in London. And there was always this internal clash when the London project managers would ring up at, 5:40 to speak to a developer, and they've gone home, right? But we would put that on the London guys and be like, okay, well, why are you still there at 6 o'clock? Like, that can't be right. Like, do we need to employ some more people? So sorry, that was a long answer to a simple question, Daniel, but it's just the nature of our business.
But I think it's going back to what you said at first, James, that you were, when you came to your friend's house and worked overnight, that you do that, you have that bustling energy as an entrepreneur, you focus on just, making it. And then you had a shift maybe 10 years after for whatever reason, and you go through increments. It's hard to define, but I think it's a pretty normal journey. Otherwise, you don't know exactly. It's kind of thinking about the company, yourself, your staff more and more. And eventually you look back and you may not necessarily know where it's coming from. But what do you do for your, like, as far as your staff, as far as sustainable staff? I mean, there are a million things you can do, but what's your thoughts on that, and how do you work with it?
And can I just,
I
have a question here as well, James. The selection process, because if you select the right person, I think it's easier. And how do you, so it's even going before that, to choose the right individual in the first instance, and then the culture that you want to develop during that time.
Geez, I wish I had a brilliant, simple answer to that, and how we kind of nail it. I think, what do we do for staff? I mean, I think that we're not there yet in terms of, the sort of physical, mental health. I think there's a lot that we do. So our HR team are brilliant, right? And we've got a DIT, so diversity, inclusion, equality and inclusion team, which is made up across the business, driven by the HR teams across the group, and they're brilliant. There's endless stuff that we're doing. It's not just like, oh, let's just do a one-off thing for Mental Health Week and send some stuff. We do that, but there's lots of processes, wrapped around in terms of just making sure we've got a diverse, equal opportunity, mental well-being stuff. Now, if I was to criticize it at all, and it's not really them directly, I think there's a broader piece that you guys will see. And that's something I've learned through the where the world is in terms of, like, sort of nutrition and physical exercise, and certainly breathing, like, is in the dark ages, right? And I think the great thing about the Aura Ring, and I've Em's had me wearing blood glucose monitors and doing BioStrap trials and things like that. What's exciting over the next 10 years, I think, is that, we can kind of grab hold of our own health. It's kind of the biohacker community now. I think that needs to sort of scale and become more mainstream. But look at the advice that GPs mostly give around health and nutrition. It's kind of awful. The science is out there, the data's out there, but Patrick, as you've pointed out, like, there's lots of crap out there as well. So you've got to navigate the proper science with the chances creating some crappy device that's based on nothing. It's quite empowering. But so to come back, it's not to sort of criticize our HR team or any HR team. I don't think they have the tools to say, this is whether it's nutrition advice, whether it's physical health, mental health, and how breathing feeds into that. It's almost, I look at what goes out and I'm kind of like, oh, bless them for trying, but it's it's kind of not, I would say it's not there yet.
It is difficult to, first off, you have to know what affects your health, and that's not obvious because a lot of people don't even think about the breathing, may not even think about sleep necessarily. Diets, most people probably know. Physical exercise, people know.
Well, they do. They know the importance of it, but actually, like, the amount of people, as you'll have spoken to, who think they know about nutrition, but it's just, you know, crap. Like right back to, you know, oh, you know, I'll only drink Diet Coke instead of Coke, or oh, I don't have sugar anymore. I've got sweetness and stuff. Like it just really kind of like,
James,
you know, the
this
slim
should be
fast diet stuff. Like it's just like, oh God, please don't do that stuff. You know, I've only learned that because I'm lucky with them, but actually I think, you know, we're in a bubble, and you take it back. People who think I've gone on, you know, changed my nutrition, you look at it and it's like,
but this should be the trainings, that not for the corporation. You know, kids go to university to learn how to work and survive in a corporation. As just as anybody else, I did business college. I went to university in Dublin, Trinity College, Dublin. I came out of that and I came into the corporate world, couldn't deal with it. I was in middle management. I had pressures coming so much from the top down. I had to pass the pressures down onto the people below me. I was in that stress response all the time, poor sleep. So we come out of university, so-called business school, and we didn't have the tools to deal with difficult situations. We didn't know anything about building up resilience. So even the corporation, and when I look back, and sometimes I blame the corporation I worked with, and probably that's a natural thing to do. But it was only later that I realized that it was me that was messed up. But nobody gave me any direction going through formal education of 16, 20 years. And accordingly, one of the best business schools that you could go to in this country. And yet we are not equipped. You know, this is going back. This isn't, you know, I suppose the corporation can do the best. And I understand it is really, really challenging. And we're tiny, you know, but in terms of even the selection process, and some of the biggest things in terms of selection is just that ability that you're getting on with somebody, and that you know that that person is there, that they're loyal, and that person also, they're going to do the best that they can do, that they're not just here to take advantage. And for me, those are the biggest, you know, the biggest attributes that somebody can have. But I think the education system really needs to step up to the mark here. But then again, we have to ask those individuals who are in the universities, they're in their tiny bubble, that certain particular type of individual, that they are not living in the real world, and yet they are preparing these kids for the real world. You know, it's even broader beyond the corporation, isn't it? Or what do you think?
I think, James, I would like to hear how you work with diet and all that, because companies, I think, view them as not having to deal with sleep, which is outside of work. Maybe breathing, training, it's something you do outside. So how do you offer the tools for something that's viewed outside, like your privacy, to deal with that on corporate time or outside, but you can't make it mandatory. So it's tricky in that way.
Yeah, I don't know, because I wouldn't say we're very active at doing it. It's early conversation. I mean, my view is, I'm a big fan of the Oura Ring, as we've mentioned, and I think, if there was kind of one metric to rule them all, right, we might pick HRV. I mean, you might disagree, and maybe you need a few others, right? But if you want a metric for one to rule them all, right, it's not a bad marker of stress and sleep and diet and exercise and general health. I don't personally, I'm not a big fan of this I think Oura do this now, right? They have like a business version where everyone gets an Oura Ring, and then you can, I've seen some screenshots where you can look at it by department and individual. Like I'm very hesitant that is a good thing to do, and I think you'd probably get quite a lot of blowback from staff. It seems fraught with danger, right? Young people tend to have a higher HRV, right? So what are we saying? We're trying to drive HRV up, so we want to skew towards a younger workforce. Like, there's a whole raft of like really dangerous things to do. But I think what would be really cool, we don't do this, what I'd love to see it, is for companies to give people Oura Rings as part of a starter package. It might not even need to be compulsory, but why not? We'll just give it to you. We're not going to link it all up. We're not going to track you. We're not going to do it by department. But we are going to give you a load of tools and techniques to, help drive your HRV up or whatever. So here's our company intranet, and there's a bit on sleep, and there's a bit on nutrition, and there's a bit on mental health, and there's a bit on breathing, and all this sort of stuff. And if you want to have some fun and like gamify it and compare it, I mean, my HRV is terrible. I don't know why. It tends to be just like pretty low, but like it's a very individual marker as well,
Yes,
right? So I think gamifying it, and that I'm personally, that's not my view. I'm not a big
Here. I
fan
think
of
it's a
that,
great idea.
but
I
go the
think
other way. Yeah, cool.
it's super. I think it's a great idea to be able to go down that route. But Daniel, this culture needs to be driven by the person at the top, because so there's not going to be too many Jameses.
No, hopefully it'll be more in the future. That I agree. So I agree that this is a holistic view. You have, like you said, starter package, like a buffet that you can try. To some people, they'll get it when they start at 28. They may start it when they're 40. So you have to kind of, so it's a financial issue as well, because, you know, giving them all this costs money. If you're a small company, you probably won't. But the point is, if you make it outside work, eventually you will bring it into your workday by yourself.
Is it a financial? You've listened to Stephen Kotler. I listened to him this morning there and yesterday. McKinsey apparently did a study on flow states, and individuals who are getting into flow states, their productivity increased by 500%. So these individuals could work, he used the example, on Monday, and they would be as productive in Monday that a normal individual would be for the 5 days. And this is going to be the competition. So this is where James, and what James is talking about, is that let's be real about this. A company is going to get buy-in if they feel that the bottom line is going to improve, or if it gives them a competitive advantage, which will ultimately result in achieving where they want to achieve, whether it is, maybe they have different goals, sustainability, bottom line, etc., etc. Giving those tools to the employees, and that's not just helping the individual in the workplace, but that's helping them ultimately outside of the workplace. Because if you can achieve that state of flow, can you achieve flow states with crap nutrition, with dysfunctional breathing, with obstructive sleep apnea? When you're living in your head, you're not going to achieve flow states. And this is where it's tying all in. So we need to show, and I think it will happen, James.
I think you're bang on, Patrick. I mean, I think you've, just like the environmental piece, the best way to get this to work is to tap into the negative way of putting this is to tap into the selfish nature of businesses. The more positive spin to put on that is to find the win-win, right? If you can find a win-win in business, then that's the dream, right? And I think you're absolutely right. You just need to show and prove the benefits. And I think the science is coming, and the young people in the workforce are the CEOs of the future, and they're starting to kind of wear these devices, and they're going to become more mass market. But yeah, just like the environmental piece is tapping into the sort of selfish nature of businesses, is tapping into that win-win. We have lots of staff schemes for getting them onto, renewable energy, for electric vehicle lease hire schemes, for green commute. We've got all these, brilliant things, because I think, talked about it earlier, right? We're asking a lot of individuals, but businesses can kind of like sit in the middle, because there's a great benefit to us of treating our staff in that way. What is business's role in the future of switching everybody over to sort of heat pumps? Like, we need to kind of think about all these things, because it's asking a lot of an individual, but there's a kind of win-win for business. And I think, you're spot on, Patrick. And I think as the science comes out, and I feel like it's changing. Like, I touched on it before. Like, if I could, and I've only been in this like one business, but the last 20 years, there was none of this chat. And there's, so whether it's talking about imposter syndrome, and CEOs talking about stress and mental health, and that's really being encouraged and exploded out on social media and seen as a good thing, versus in like 1999 when I started, that was just a sign of weakness, and you were never going to survive in business if you can't cut it, if you can't hack the stress, you got to get out. So that's there's a seismic change there, I think, and there's just a little bit of catching up to do with the science, and as these devices get more mainstream and as you guys get your message out there, I'm a little bit aware of it now, but I'm not brilliant with my breathing, but I take my mouth at night. I'm much better in the gym. Most of my gym workouts are, breathing through my nose until I break. I'm quite aware of it when I'm sat at my desk. That's often a trigger for me. It's hard for me to sort of sort of say categorically what the breathing has done. COVID, the last 2 years has been amazing for me, changed my, work-life balance, meant that I could work out more, be at home more, do more yoga, hang out with my wife more, because I'm not in London more. My lunchtime nutrition has completely changed because I'm not grabbing crap from Pret. So there's lots of things that have changed. I'm in a much, much better state. So it's hard for me scientifically to say, this is what the breathing has done. But it's definitely a big component.
Well, the fact that you've stuck with it, it has to, I'm assuming, it has contributed something. And I think that's the best way, is the incremental changes anyway. Instead of having the mouth open during sleep, you'll know by your Oura ring anyway.
Yeah. Well, it's weird, isn't it? You feel weird, like if I sat here breathing through my mouth. It just sort of feels a bit weird. And
I did it for 20 years.
You feel like your mouth is drying up during the day, and you catch yourself doing it. And Em and I will go on walks together, and my mind will have drifted off, and then she'll poke me in the side and go, "Oi, you're breathing through your mouth." sorry. So we kind of do it together. It's nice.
James, do you think so? It sounds like there's a process to this. If you want to get in a more sustainable, healthy environment, more specifically breathing, there are other things you can bring in as well. But awareness. First off, you have to be aware that it's actually helpful. But then going back to what you said, Patrick, about the cost, like the reason, like if you could show a company backwards that they made money off breathing or whatever, then it'd be no brainer. But what it's going to cost you if you spend like 30,000 euros or whatever on rings and breathing exercises, whatever, but you don't know what the income or revenues are going to be. So you get one known and one unknown. And even if you want that, even if you solve that, then you have to build like the sustainability for people to actually do it. Because if you just got a drawing seeing this is what we've done in some other place. So I think at least there's a 3-step process of awareness, understanding that this is a small investment long-term to make, but then you also have to, you have to help people to get the habit and sustainability going. It doesn't.
Yeah, and I think you can, but the timing's good in that, I think a lot of companies they're not doing this, but they're already making those types of investment without having a very tangible way of exactly measuring the return on it, right? So that most companies of any credibility have a good diversity, equality, inclusion team that are focused on mental health, physical health, whether it's free gym memberships for people, whether it's doing stuff for Mental Health Week. Companies are investing in this stuff already. They're spending tens of thousands if they're bigger, whatever. And they're not necessarily able, they kind of know it's a good thing to do, but it's very hard for them to connect that with actual, churn rates, like how many fewer people resigned. That's expensive. How much did the output go up? Well, we can see output's gone up, but there's 100 things that have changed this year. So how do we connect it to that? But they're doing it. They're doing it anyway, so I don't think it's a completely cold sell. I think you're just layering on something actually that's even more scientific to the stuff that they're already doing. You're connecting it with mental health and fitness and sleep and nutrition and all of that sort of stuff. So I think 10 years ago is a really, really hard sell. 20 years ago, an impossible sell.
And James, what about, because I'm just conscious we're drawing to a close because of time. What's your vision for 10 years' time? Where do you think it's going to be in 10 years' time?
Well, I think, I'm optimistic. I mean, for me personally, the next part of my career, I'm loving the kind of environmental sustainable piece. And for me, it's about like the second half of my career is a bit more about kind of trying to give back and feel like that I'm very proud of building a business and being successful there, but I want to kind of create a bit more of a legacy. I'm optimistic that I think a lot of this stuff is going to become more mainstream. There's some, again, to keep going back to these devices, the Oura Ring, the BioStrap, as I said, or, blood glucose. I think blood glucose monitoring is going to be a massive one when they can probably will have one of those that's kind of non-invasive. I suspect, in 10 years time, we'll be wearing 1 or 2 devices that are just like giving us this incredible scan of our body, and then this very tailored, personalized advice on, what you need to do, today, like, the Oura Ring on steroids, right? But, wrapping it up into nutrition. And so that very kind of like personalized, highly tailored advice on sleep, nutrition, mental health, all of it coming through, driven from technology. I mean, I'm a techie, so I'm going to get excited about that. That's right. I guess that's what springs to mind when you ask me where we might be in 10 years time. And then to your point, like maybe it'll then more easily connect with my, with the breathing and helping me to show that I didn't breathe particularly well yesterday, and this is what I need to do. So, yeah.
Great. It's been a pleasure, Daniel.
No, absolute pleasure. Would like to revisit maybe in the future some other questions. This is
10 years.
Yeah,
have another chat.
No, but this is an evolving area. I think it will be very interesting to kind of look back every year to kind of see where it's going. But thank you so much, James. Really great to have like somebody who's a real entrepreneur who's grown a business from nothing to something fantastic. So and can also incorporate a little bit of breathing, training, and all that. So yeah, very interesting to hear.
Thanks, guys. And it's been a pleasure. Lovely to chat to you as always.
Pleasure, James. Thanks very much.